Welcome back to Big Fish Side Dish, the companion, the redheaded stepchild of Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom. And on this special version of the show, this is where I bring back returning champions, people who've been on the show before, and we have more topical conversations where we catch up on what's new with them, what's happened since we last saw them. And, the regular show is meant to be more evergreen, but on this show, for the side dish, we like to see what's fresh and what's cooking. And speaking of what's fresh, I'm sitting here with Kevin Geiger. He's sitting here staring at me. How you doing,
Brendan.
Kevin?
I'm doing well, thank you, and I'm very honored to be part of the returning champions contingent. I thought I'd never be seen here again after I made, I think, the parental advisory warning appear on your blog.
You got the first explicit because you said some naughty word, and we're sure to let a few fly here, but
I'll try to be
It was
better.
so minor, too, but even if you let loose with like a shit, you technically have to put
So
the
there
explicit.
we got it right now.
Just barely. There we go. We got it again. All right, here we go. High
Sure,
five.
yes.
High five. All right. So, as you know, because you've listened to the show, which is
Yes.
nice, and we talked about it, and I just reminded you. So there's three ways you know this, but this is pretty unedited. So unless we say something that's going to get us deported, we're going to keep this, just roll right through this with stammers and ums and sips of water and everything
Much
in between.
appreciated.
So we're going to start with what's new with you, and then we have the two big topics that we will riff on, which will be the environment in all ways, and then the future, like yours, what's happening in the future here, etc. So first of all, what's new in Kevin Geigerland?
Well, what's new is I've got two little kids, two little tykes crawling all over me, which is delightful, and it's also like raised work-life balance to like a new level. So I think at the time that I spoke to you for Big Fish, was my second daughter
I don't
born
think you
then?
had Emma, right?
Emma.
I don't think you had Emma.
I'm not sure
I
what-
think she was.
February she was
I'm
born.
pretty sure she was. It was right around that time. I think literally. I think your wife might have given birth like a week later.
It may have,
It was
yeah, it may have been
there.
right
It was
then.
right there, yeah.
But she, of course, then has gone from newborn to almost walking. She's 9 months old now. And as soon as they get mobile, I mean, it's really cool. Like, you see the world open up for them. The look on her face when she realizes, like, my God, I can go anywhere I want. I can do anything I want.
It's got to be so cool.
It is. And it's also, like, hell on wheels, because she's
But
just
God, she can go anywhere.
into everything. And Claire's now 3.
Yeah.
So we shifted her from daycare, which was a 2-hour-a-day thing that ramped up eventually to 6-hour-a-day. Now she's in a proper preschool. They call it kindergarten here.
And they start so young with that.
They do, age 3.
That's wild.
So it's like in the U.S., 4 or 5, you go to kindergarten for a year, and then you're in a first grade, second grade.
Sure.
Here in China and also many parts of Asia, kindergarten is like a 3-year deal, like age 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
And then you're into, your first year of middle school is still grade 1.
And then you're studying for the Gaokao.
Yes, exactly. Well, in our case, not exactly. But
we'll get to that.
the upshot is that she had to change schools. It became a little more formal.
Okay.
It's right near Wanda Plaza, the place she's at. I probably shouldn't call out where she's in school, but just for child safety.
Wow.
But she.
Well, hopefully they have
Well, no,
security.
just in general. I've got a cousin who used to be a state trooper in New York.
Yeah.
And now he works undercover. I won't name his name because then I'll blow his cover.
Because then there's that.
But he always tells
You're
me,
batting
"Kev,"
1,000 for
he's like,
privacy and security.
Don't post photos of your kids. Don't tell people where you live. Don't this, don't that. And I'm like, well, I'm in Beijing, like one of the most secure cities in the world.
Exactly.
In many respects.
Family-friendly place.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to worry so much about crime as much as like getting knocked over by a bicycle. But anyway, back to the point.
So,
she had to change school. She was very excited about it, but then, of course, on the first day, kind of nervous. So they talk about that period of adjustment of anywhere from a week to, in some children's cases, 2 months of just daily crying jags. I don't want to go to school.
Okay.
She kind of got over it within the first week or two, and now she loves it. And every morning when she says, "Daddy, where are we going?" I said, "We're going to school, at least for the weekdays." And she says, "Which school?" She always looks at me suspiciously. I say, "Your school."
She still hasn't bought into.
Well, she's
the new
like,
one?
"The new school or the old?" I said, "The new one."
Yeah.
And she said, "Okay, good." And she loves the old one, but she's done with it.
Yeah,
she's like not sentimental
She's
about
like
it.
grown
It's like,
up,
all right, I'm a big girl now.
Nice.
So that's been great. But she's been home this past week, sick.
Yeah, that's the crazy part.
Yeah, that kind of throws a wrench in it. It sounds selfish. I'm talking about impact to me. But
but you also work it. You work from home.
I work from home.
So you need to be able to segment some brain time toward grown-up stuff.
Working from home makes it easier to take care of her, to go pick her up when she's sick and so forth. But then your day's blown, and so my wife and I both work from home and have been just dealing with poor Claire having a stomach bug this past week. And then, Emma crawling all over all of us and not caring about the stomach bug.
And now she's sick too, right?
Not so much. She's got a little bit of a runny nose, but she seems to have so far been impervious to the stomach bug. But my wife's coming down with it now. So it's just viruses,
Yeah, I told you walked in here and he told me all this. I'm like, no tongue for you, buddy.
Yeah. So sorry to disappoint you, man.
Yeah, that's all right.
But next time.
That's, hey. Welcome to Saturday in Beijing, guys.
That's right. There'll be like a companion to side dish called spooning or something like that. That'll...
I would like to think I'm not quick enough to come up with a better joke.
Yeah, I don't know if we can segue off of that, so I won't really try.
Well, it's funny because we were talking beforehand how, I think anybody who knows me knows this. Anybody who follows the show closely enough knows, don't have kids myself, and I don't feel like I've never felt like I wanted kids myself because of fucked up childhood. I'll just go blue right away. For whatever degree the genetic part might travel, this is taking a dark turn. This is gonna be funny when I'm done. It's gonna be funny when I'm done.
Dark. I think we've lost most of the audience by now anyway.
Anybody who's still listeing, yeah. So Kevin's he's gonna give you his Social Security and his PIN number if you just hang on 5 more minutes. I'm going to keep it in because I said I wouldn't edit, but I'm off the track here. What I was getting at is I do enjoy seeing like my friends with their kids and seeing the growth. It's like, oh, that's so great, but I don't have to change diapers.
Right.
so I love it when I see these fun things. It's a lot of fun, and I'm not just saying this because Kevin's sitting here, but you're just like this super dad. You and your wife, but you're just like he's always like adventures with the kids, and it's anybody who has kids. I think you would totally be jealous of what I see.
Well, it's nice of you to say that, and I guess just to qualify this without getting too boring for anybody who is still listening, I'm a late life dad, so I'm 52, and we had Claire when I was 49, turning 50.
Okay, so same age as me, basically.
Yeah, basically, and my wife's younger, considerably younger. Yeah. So I won't out her, but she's not 52, and what that meant for me is that I had indulged myself really for half a century. Yeah. So that by the time I finally had my first child, I was really ready to dial back my own work, even though I've been talking about how it's affected by a sick child, but really dial back my own work and not be such a workaholic and focus more on enjoying raising a child and having a family.
Right.
And then, starting to work again, but really balancing my days so that I don't ruin my own health to the point where I had been doing so previously, and just try to have a more balanced life. And the having children and a family really forced me to do that. And then, Claire was IVF. So when we had her, that was very planned, very scientific, and then Emma was like, surprise!
Hey!
It was a complete surprise.
Biology still works.
It was kind of cool because we thought, I guess we can't have kids naturally. Hey, we can.
Hey,
cool.
Look at this. Wow.
And wouldn't you know it, when the pressure's off, you're not in your hellish corporate job anymore, right? You're dialing back a little bit, taking a little more, you're getting normal amounts of sleep. You can actually have a kid naturally. Who'd have thunk it?
All the stuff works.
So, and I know I talked to many people who are in the same situation where under the pressures of daily life, they think, we can't have children, and there's nothing biologically wrong.
Yeah.
And then, one day they're relaxing in the Bahamas or whatever, and boom, it all comes together. So in terms of the super dad part, that's nice of people to say that, but I just really want to, invest as much as I can in them. And that also sounds very kind of corporate language, but really commit to being a dad and being there for them, making sure they have experiences and see things and do things. We take them everywhere.
That's kind of what I'm getting at, and I don't tell you how to manage your experience, but anything I'm saying is because if I were to have kids, I would hope that I could have. You've consciously created this kind of environment for them and for yourself, which is obviously going to help them to be very well-rounded people. And I think whenever I see you with your kids, they're just so freaking happy. And I know you don't post all the pictures. I know you're not posting the screaming and the crying and the I won't do this or that. I'm sure you don't have time to Instagram
Nobody in my
that
house
stuff.
is happy every minute.
Of course. But I'm just saying that, like, you're going on this adventure, you're going on this place, and a lot of people don't have the time to do that. A lot of people don't have their life structured in such a way. The point is, you've earned it. You've busted your ass and had some good breaks, but you made your breaks to where you could do this, and you created this environment, which is kind of one of your main topics to talk about as well. What's happening here physically as well as philosophically.
Yes, we think a lot about the environment we live in now, and in a different way than we did before we have kids. We think a lot about the future in a way that we didn't when we had kids. You have a different lens, right? That you're thinking about them, and the fact that the future, my future will be, unless I get hit by a bus tomorrow. But you think, okay, a few more decades, hopefully. But these kids hopefully have, maybe 80, 100 years, perhaps, or more. Technology willing, in front of them.
If Peter Thiel gets his way. Exactly.
And also then with the environment, just, these little sponges kind of soaking up everything from influences to chemicals and pollutants and how do you protect them but also not overprotect them? You don't want to be a helicopter parent where you're choppering in every second to snatch them up out of danger, but you don't want them to get hurt.
Don't touch that!
Exactly. Yeah. And it's something that you really have to, my wife and I talk about it. Luckily, we're relatively on the same page. We're not one of those situations where we have radically different views on child rearing. And it's not like we figured all this out before we had the kids.
Yeah.
Like, we're on the same page with this, that, and the other thing related to future potential progeny. Mm-hmm. But we make sure we talk about this stuff, hopefully not in front of the kids, because Claire is picking up everything now.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
She understands and picks up on everything.
So they're both going to grow up totally bilingual. Yeah. Being able to, you're not going to be able to slip it past them, right?
They are. Claire's Chinese is already better than mine. And just, my wife says, Claire's just learning the way you should be learning. She's just doing it.
She's right. Exactly.
She's listening and she's just using the language, and it's like, go figure, that actually. So she's correcting my Chinese now, my pronunciation.
That's hilarious.
It is, and it's also very useful because now I don't have to learn anything more.
You're done.
I'm done. I can take
Maximum
her with me
Chinese
to the
learning.
bank. I just point to the kids.
She's like, "What is a certificate of deposit?"
Yeah, and she's an incredible negotiator.
Really? Okay.
She is just, when my wife and I at one point this summer said, we've got to write a book on how to negotiate like a toddler.
Okay.
Because they are just brutal. And one lesson I learned in my life, one of many, is that if you have a brilliant idea, somebody else probably has already had it and done something with it.
Right.
So I just quickly Googled how to negotiate like a toddler, and when you know it, there's a book out by a lawyer who has a toddler. And it's a fantastic book, and everything in there was completely relatable.
Like you related to all of it.
Just, like upping the ante and then changing the rules of the game at the last minute, making sure that at the end of the negotiation, the other party doesn't hate you. All this kind of stuff that, when to cry, when to take your ball and go home.
That's pretty deep game stuff.
And and she just does it naturally. So yeah, it's helped me in terms of how I look at negotiating. It's like, wow, so you can just do that.
So when to cry strategically in a pitch meeting? Is the pitch good, or should I wait till after the KTV, after the business dinner?
She gets away with a lot because she's a cute little adorable a big 52-year-old Lawai crying isn't going to really do.
Yeah, it's not going to track the same.
No, but in terms of raising them. So we're here in Beijing.
Yeah, exactly.
I've been here for 10 years. My wife has been here for 16.
And your wife is Taiwanese.
Yeah, she's from Taiwan, but she went to graduate school at the Beijing Film Academy and stayed. Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned before on Big Fish, it's kind of a 1 year at a time thing for me, but that pretty soon sloughs into I've been here a decade.
Right.
And with the kids, now Claire's been here 3 years. She's got a Beijing accent. Emma's, looking to be here for a while. They've got friends here. They've got activities here. And they really have a life here. But at the same time, there's craziness in terms of the air quality, which actually, objectively in general got better last year.
It has been on an uptick. Like it's nice today.
Yeah, today is amazing.
Today's really
we
great.
went out today. It's like get outside.
Yeah, but it was sucky. Like was it Tuesday, Wednesday that it was like wretched? You know,
and we know what
to
to do when that happens. Sure, but it's like you think about it, but then with all the crazy crap that's going on in the U.S., it's like. Both my wife and I are not keen to like go back there. It's like so the safety issues in different ways are pretty considerable there now. Who would have thought? Yeah. So where we raise them for their safety, for their the benefit of their education.
Right.
What kind of environment they're in competitively with other kids? Are they being inspired? Do they have teachers who are inspiring creativity or kind of teaching them more of a rote didactic way? Do they have opportunities for growth, both as children and then later as adults? Where should they live? At a certain point, we won't need to decide. They'll be fully functional, autonomous beings.
Well, if you just wait 18 years,
exactly,
the deciding's done.
But get them to 18 alive, and then send them out and let them do their thing.
But what are you thinking? This is actually. I mean, I thought I was taking it dark, and now you're talking about raising kids in the political as well as physical environment of the world here, and it's not all doom and gloom, but between, I mean, and again, I don't want to alienate my 3% of my friends who are listening, who are still proud conservatives. I would say a chunk of the audience are friends who are conservative or moderate.
And who are you talking about? People in the U.S. or people here in China?
People in the States. Okay. But most of my friends who identify with the R by their name were anybody but the guy who's currently sitting there. Kevin and I are fairly aligned politically. Yeah. Which is to say we think the current situation's a dumpster fire.
Yeah, pretty much.
There's got to be a more original phrase than that. We have to come up with a new euphemism for horrible. But so you don't want to... You're not in a rush to go back.
Friends of mine in the U.S. are saying you should probably stay in China a little while longer.
Yeah. I tell people, and there's an issue. No one has really busted my chops about it. Somebody brought it up in kind of a funny way of, you're in a foreign country and you shouldn't talk shit about your country. I'm not talking shit about, my people are awesome, and it's, you gotta understand, coming here was not a political act. Staying here is not a political act, but you have to consider these things.
I get where they're coming from too. Any company I've worked for example, or just there's a term called family business, and they say you don't air family business and dirty laundry to the outside. Exactly. So within a company, you might really mix it up and critique how are we doing things and how can we be better. Right. But when you have your face to the outside world, you kind of sublimate that stuff and you have that unified front, and you do the same thing with your family, which is why they call it family business. And as a U.S. citizen, I've always been and maintained that I feel more American and more proud of my country and where I'm from and what I'm able to do. The fact that I can live overseas, live wherever the hell I want, and do what I want to do as an American is something I've always been proud of and more conscious of when you're actually overseas and testing that. Right. Things really have gone off the rails in a way lately that doesn't make me question that or go back on that. Mm-hmm. So when I bitch about Trump, for example, I don't do that. My wife hears a lot about it. But my Chinese friends, they don't really care so much. And they don't really understand the fine-grained aspects of certain things. Sure. Although I don't know how many it's pretty blatant kind of fire dumpster stuff, as you said, dumpster fire stuff. But I don't really externalize so much of that. Mm-hmm. But it's something that I think about. And when I'm talking to my pals here like yourself or on Facebook, my Facebook feed is just nuts. I actually backed off of it because it's just taking too much energy. And it's kind of the same as just wait till November, midterms. Yeah. And just as opposed to bitching, just
November
vote.
2020 is probably the case at this point.
Yeah, I will see how this all works out. When I go back to America, I've taken the kids back, and we have a good time. I see my folks. The politics always comes up. They're aligned, so it's not like arguing with them, but just they're depressed and tired. Like, God, is this ever gonna? Why is it getting worse? Right. And then maybe the country we thought we had isn't the country we have. What we thought was going on previously with a maybe more liberal turn is
especially
changing.
On the social stuff and being welcoming to people and
that's what I think about with my kids is like how in terms of environment, it's not just here in China but also in the U.S. where is going to be a place where they can grow up with liberal social values? This is something I feel is important, where people are accepted irrespective of race, sexual orientation, blah, blah, that we're more accommodating than judgmental, etc. It used to be the case that America was never perfect, of course, but represented some kind of ideal in that regard that's just really out the window now. And I didn't even think I was going to be talking about this right now on the show.
Well, I didn't mean to throw you right into it.
No, it's okay.
It's
but it's something that, this is part of why when I do lie awake at night, when I'm not so exhausted that it's, I'm conked out regardless, I think about, it's not just like, oh, should I stay in China or not? But okay, what's going on in the U.S.?
Right.
My wife is from Taiwan, but that's also got its own complexities.
Sure.
There's, where do you go? What do you do? And I think it's an evolving situation, of course. So, you kind of make your decision for the moment and kind of forecast where things might go, and then as that vector changes, you adjust.
Well, so how are you examining? I mean, this is a lot to consider. Right, there are physical issues, both of environment here and in terms of, actual physical safety stuff in the States with just the craziness that's going on, dramatically complicating the 4-dimensional chess is the lovely young kids. So how do you? What do you think this is? I mean, we also were going to talk about future stuff here at a bit, but
we should.
There's no hurry, but what are you? Yeah, how do you sort of process this? How do you reconcile it?
I'm in the process of trying to reconcile it. I'll put it that way. And just coming back from Taiwan, we
from the province of Taiwan.
Yeah, the province of Taiwan. We.
Sorry, Taiwan.
No, it's okay. We're talking about just the feeling of walking down the streets and what you feel the hazards are or are not. And not to oversimplify, but like in Taiwan, there's almost nothing to worry about. You can walk down, there aren't so many people, there's not something coming at you the wrong way down the road that's going to bowl you over. You don't have to worry so much about being mugged, etc. So like in the U.S., you've got muggings and shootings, etc. Right. In mainland China, you really don't have to worry about being mugged so much. I've never really worried about that, but something can just come flying at you and take you out.
Yeah.
Or a piece of sheet metal drops down and cleaves you in half. There are things like that.
Sure.
And in Taiwan, it's not that it's perfectly safe. They just had a horrible, train accident a couple days ago.
Right.
So I don't want to make light, but generally pretty safe. And then in China, you have just some random kind of public safety hazards. And then in America, you really have to worry about, when we were there over the summer, you see somebody coming down the street who was probably released from a mental health institution in the 80s when Reagan kind of just, dumped everybody out on the streets, not personally, but the administration did. And you'll see a homeless person shuffling up. And, when I was a single guy or even with my wife, you could handle it one way. You maybe just walk right by them. When you've got 2 little kids with you, you just get, and I hate to say it, but you do start to think in a very protective way. It's just like, I can't afford to be a social liberal right now. I just got to make sure that these 2 little tykes are safe. And nothing against you there, but I can't even treat you like a person right now. I just got to assume the worst and get them the hell inside that gate, that type of thing. So there's these different sort of environments with their own, attendant kind of risks and factors that we're trying to process in terms of raising our kids without fear, but raising them to be alert and also having them understand that different places have different things to consider.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's interesting you mentioned that. And again, by the way, these episodes, so far, knock on wood, you're only the third side dish so far, but
this might be the last one.
This might be the last one. This is the proof or the death of the concept. But they tend to. But they are more tangent-y, and we go where we go, and that's what I think the people who are still listening are probably hopefully enjoying because we'll get into some interesting stuff here, especially in a bit. But I was going to say this sounds kind of tangent-y off of what you just said, but it's related. Coming from LA, I'm thinking about this a lot in terms of future. For myself, because I'm going to connect homelessness in LA with the tax law changes in China. Watch this. So, can you guess how I'm going to do this?
I didn't guess, but I am intrigued.
It's gonna all make sense in about 90 seconds. So, given that there's this new change coming in, and we were joking about this online. Oh, it's open for public commentary until the 20th of October. Great. And then the 19th, they announced what the rule was. But there's this change with the tax laws coming in China that will be more in line with the way a lot of Western, like the U.S. has this, having to do with if you are a foreigner but you live here more than a certain amount of time, then you also have to pay local tax on your global income, and I assume there's some mechanism for not being double taxed, etc.
There are, yeah.
But
currently there are.
But here's the issue: compliance. The cost of compliance is going to be an added factor because you're going to have what do I have to do? Well, like in this case, it's going to be in Chinese, right? Mm-hmm. So I have to deal with like a Chinese CPA. I'm going to have to deal with reporting, and then what if my business? I mean, what if the structure is I don't file April 15th? There's, we're expats, so we get an extra 6 months by default. Plus, what if you do an extension because of some business contingency? Right. And it's actually like a calendar year later that you're filing, which is my case, frankly. In this case, I'm current, but then this year is going to be this way because of the way some things happened.
And then boom, you're homeless.
So what if they decide the rule here is, you have to file May 1st of May because that's 2 weeks after your deadline in the States. Well, but that's not my deadline. But this is how we knew it. Well, this is a tangent. So the point is, so if you are here, if you are physically in China, the way the rule is going to be is that if you are here more than 183 days a year, you must pay on all global income, which means that the compliance, like how do you do that? You're dealing with, having a local tax person, et cetera, which as someone on a business visa who doesn't really have income from China, I live here, I spend money here, I don't make money here. So bottom line is the compliance of that is going to be a bitch. So where am I going to go? Well, in LA, I have a mailbox in the storage unit. I don't keep a second apartment that I just keep empty. So where do you go?
Have you stopped paying state taxes in California?
Are we still recording? We are.
No, I found out you could legally. There's a certain.
I didn't earn anything there. Yeah. So actually, I don't think I think we filed, but I didn't know anything.
Once I closed my California LLC because I had given up my residence in 2008-9, my CPA said, you can stop filing California state tax. And I said, really? Legally? She said, yeah. I wouldn't tell you if it was illegal.
Exactly. Yeah, we filed last year, but I didn't know anything. And so I don't think I guess I won't know anything this year, now that you mention it. So where I was going with this is, where do I go? Because I need to figure out a game plan, assuming that this is not retroactive, assuming this starts January 1, hopefully. Yeah. Well, that means that starting January 1, I'm going to need to be somewhere else. I mean, and I could comply with that, but that's a whole lot of hassle. So it also makes me think I need to open opportunities. Do I want to go back to LA? I love LA, but do I want to go back to the environment that I just left after 14 years?
I think, and to bring this around so it's not like an episode of Fretful Lawai. What are we going to do? For any of these life decisions, whether it's with yourself and your business or your personal relationships, your kids, one of the best pieces of advice I got was that you should have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan Z. And
I like that.
Your plan A is the ideal. So that's like you're in a rowboat, right? In the ocean, and you see this island ahead, and plan A is this beautiful, lush, tropical island that you want to get to. That's your primary goal, whether it has to do with your business, your creative work, the person you'd like to get with, what have you, where your children, you would like them to go to school. Mm-hmm. Plan B is just to the side of that. It's like you didn't get exactly to for whatever reason, the currents took you in a different direction. Mm-hmm. There was a shark. You decided to veer over a bit. But it's still tangentially related to what you're trying to do with your plan A, but it's not your plan A. Right. But it's close enough. Right. It's better than nothing. Plan Z is just like you bail out to the side, right? So it's like, all right, I'm the boat's taking water, you put on your life preserver and you jump, but at least it's something that can sustain you, right? So you're not homeless, right. You're not without means and without some kind of gainful activity to keep yourself from going crazy mentally, right? And that you're able to do something to sustain yourself to get back into the game later, personally, professionally, what have you. And so I've tried to look at everything now, mapping out, okay, what's my plan A, this? What's my plan B, that? What's my plan Z, this thing over here? And it helps just to, and then you reassess that every few months, especially here
Well, I appreciate that, and you jumped in at the right time, so it's not Fretful LY. That'll be like the spinoff of the spinoff. Where I want to put a button on this because I actually said I was going to unify that, and where I was going to finish it is that my old assistant and great friend, she, after the previous company here blew up, she finally decided to go back to grad school, so she got into film school, into the grad program at LMU, and I'm very excited for her. Cool. And I found myself giving her,
Loyola Marymount.
Yeah, and she's really smart, and the place, gorgeous beautiful, campus, beautiful school in a beautiful part of town, right across the street from the ocean. It's a gorgeous part of Greater LA. But I gave her the thumbnail. I told her all the stuff about getting around, and I found myself explaining. I said, look, I need to tell you about the homeless situation. And look, I volunteered at the Midnight Mission. That was like the charity my fraternity sponsored. I mean, I'm not saying that for brownie points here. I'm just, I have enormous empathy. I campaign for Bernie, okay? I'm a huge social progressive kind of guy. But you need to understand that, I explained to her about dealing with buses and trains and the people on the street. And I said, you will see people. And you see some unfortunate people here, although they tend to sweep them off to the side where you don't see them as much. I explained and said, you will see people who literally have not bathed in 20 years.
Yeah.
And you will see those people. And because sadly, that's an unfortunate reality of what happens to folks back home. So where do I want to go? Well, I don't want to go there either, right? So my plan Z, on a happier note, as we get into the future, my plan Z has always, it's actually been more my plan B, involves New Zealand. Right, I love New Zealand, Western culture, and I know it's
hobbits.
It's become hobbits. What's not to love? Hobbits, pipeweed. It's not. It's what's not to love. What's not to love about New Zealand? Minus the hole in the ozone layer that they have right above them, and then that's perfect. But and it's great. And of course, they have the very small, very we'll say bespoke. They have a very bespoke film industry, right?
Bespoke.
Yes,
that's actually been my new favorite word this last year. Bespoke.
Is it?
Yeah.
Have you been?
Well, custom made, right?
Have you been,
exactly. Tailored to your specifications.
Yes. It implies small and handmade and custom tailored.
You spoke about something you'd like to be. Hence the beast, but that's not the technical definition.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. You spoke it into existence. So the thing is, though, that's always more of the strategy for, I guess, like next level of accomplishment from where I am or something, right? Because that's not a place you go to you need to go there bringing something because it's hard for the locals to get something going. You can't just go and try to like gin something up.
Hey, fellas.
Hey, guys, I'm here to help. Yeah, we don't need you. Thanks. So to you and for the 3 people who are listening, please send me a comment so that we know who listened this far in the episode. Sorry, Kevin, it's on me. This one's on me, buddy.
Should I send you a comment? Because I'll listen to it.
You will. We're doing pretty good. People have a higher tolerance. People have been jogging, or people have been on the Stairmaster or washing dishes. It's what people are still with us. So for my future, I don't know. I got no idea. What about you? What's the future hold?
And really, who the hell can know? So when you think about it, this is why, and I'm very type A in many respects, and China has slowly beaten that out of me, or maybe rapidly beaten that out of me. I think it's a good idea to think about the future, but not to try to control it. Mm-hmm. My wife is going to be laughing hearing me saying this.
Well, hi, if you're listening, Lynn.
You can't, yeah. Right, when
one of the three comments.
She probably turned it off already. Yeah. The future is something that you think about preparing yourself for, of course, but then also, going back to the whole idea of children, and I've been thinking about this a lot with Claire and with Emma. How do you prepare your children for a future which is changing more rapidly by the day and is going to continue to be visited by revolutions that will make, people say, the digital revolution makes the industrial revolution look like nothing, and then you're going to have the artificial intelligence revolution, the machine learning revolution, these revolutions which are going to potentially displace humanity, or at least cause a complete reconception of what humanity is about and what we should be doing. This is something to consider in terms of what will we be doing, and how do you prepare your children for growing up into that world and not being a victim of it, but at least being able to partake in it in a meaningful way and hopefully benefit from it.
How do you even begin to approach this? I mean, we were talking a little bit earlier about, I think we can say, but Jack Ma and what's going to happen if he gets his wish.
You mean about
about automating and like what happens to all these people? It's like we just got these people jobs, and like you're going to tell them.
Well, that was a funny.
Now we're going to tell them go away, but we don't have like a UBI for you or any kind of thing. Like, what do we do
when Alibaba is saying that? The workforce is so expensive. I mean, the reason that people come to China to make stuff, to do stuff, is because the workforce is not so expensive. And I know it's been getting more expensive.
Sure.
The pressures, the social pressures, the economic pressures, the aspiration that people have to live a better life. It's not the cheapest game in town anymore, and that's always a race to the bottom.
That's kind of moved on other places, but it's still cheaper than other places.
It is, but when you talk about we want to replace 90% of our workforce with machines, it's like what do those people do? And in any country that's going to be an issue, but in a place like China where the government really does worry about having people either unemployed or underemployed or just idle and maybe thinking about things too much or just not having anything on their hands to do. I mean, being bored is terrible, right? Yeah. And it's not a recipe for...
So what my grandmother said, the idle hands, devil's workshop.
Yeah, exactly. I can't imagine that companies are just going to be free to do whatever they want on that front, and it's not going to be regulated in some way. I mean, we've seen a tightening up on the media front where I work across the board, where even though in many cases, companies were doing what they thought the government wanted. They said, let's export Chinese culture to the rest of the world. And yes, here we go. And started doing that. And everything from like exhibiting work overseas to acquiring companies overseas. And then suddenly the brakes got slammed on that hard, as we've seen in various news pieces and so forth. And that got reeled back in. Yeah. And it's much harder now to... a lot of deals went under because people couldn't transfer money, or they could, but they didn't want to give the impression of something unseemly. Mm-hmm. So everything just kind of got really chill. And that regulation is just part and parcel of doing business in China. So I can't imagine that. I was listening to an entrepreneur in China talk about, or an investor actually, talking to an entrepreneur about, this looks like such a disruptive technology. And I just laughed, like, what does it mean to do something disruptive in mainland China? Can you be permitted to do something quote unquote disruptive? I know that they were aping the buzzword of the day or of the year in Silicon Valley, disruptive. But, who's going to allow anybody to be disruptive? Truly disruptive in mainland China. Now, of course, having said that...
They might get invited to tea to discuss that with someone.
But now there have been things
Which is the euphemism for called in to answer.
China and the world, really, but China's a place where you say one thing and as it's coming out of your mouth, you realize, you know what? Somebody's listening going, yeah, but... And so the yeah, but to that is, let's take the bicycles, for example. Right. That has been disruptive. Mm-hmm. And in some ways that are good, in some ways that are bad. I mean, the genius idea was that you don't have to dock that thing into a specific spot. You can leave it anywhere. The bad thing is you can leave it anywhere, right? And when you see those bicycles thrown into rivers and so forth, I think the frustration factor that we've all felt when you've tripped over one or had one like blow over onto your leg in a windy day results in some of the bicycle murders we've seen where these poor bikes are thrown into the street or dumped into a ravine,
thrown off an overpass.
Exactly. So to say that things won't be allowed to be disruptive in China probably isn't exactly correct. But this isn't a bad thing. The government here is very attentive to like if things are going to cause problems or not for society in general, on the whole. Individuals can get pinched here and there.
Yeah, but they'll take the hit for the greater good.
Exactly. And that's always a balancing act with any society. So you look at this, you think about, so back to the idea of like machine learning and artificial intelligence. Right. The good news, I think, and I don't say this with any authority, but because as you know, I work in VR.
I don't say anything with authority, too.
I've been working in VR, and as soon as you're working in VR, you almost immediately get into considerations of artificial intelligence, because for something to be convincingly immersive, interactive, you need to have some level of machine intelligence to have a responsive experience for the user, the consumer. And so I've been researching that a lot in terms of artificial intelligence, machine learning. And, of course, the big fear is that we're going to have, like, Terminator world, where the machines become self-aware, they launch a nuclear attack on the globe, the few remaining humans are scurrying around, in piles of trash, leading the resistance against the machines. I don't believe that that's imminent. I mean, AlphaGo and so forth.
But maybe in our lifetime.
Well, yeah. But
I just want to go in the first wave.
I
don't want to rebuild.
Just like
I want a clean exit if that happens.
The revelation comes true, same thing. I want to be taken out right away. The first seal broken, I want to be gone. Exactly. The frogs or whatever it is that comes out
Fretful Ally coming soon from Geiger Davis Vision.
But in terms of like the generalized intelligence that's necessary, that general intelligence, it's relatively easy to create a computer that can be the best Go player in the world. That's a very special skill set. And I'm not belittling the efforts there. I'm not saying this for the sake of the humans I'm insulting, but for the machine, please don't kill me.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's to achieve general intelligence is a whole order of magnitude. And it may even require an approach that isn't being taken currently. But here's the sad fact. Most of us aren't doing anything that requires a lot of general intelligence. So most of the jobs that we are doing right now, if you think about it, most of the things that we do for companies, for ourselves, even for self-employed, is very easily replicable by, whether you're, people forget about bank tellers and so on, but if you're an actuary, if you're an insurance salesman, if you're even programmers who, when they were talking about machines advancing, you see programmers at these conferences clapping like they're somehow immune, that they'll be controlling. No, you guys are also going to be replaced already. Machines are writing op-ed pieces. Computers are being programmed by machines that are actually writing a majority of the code, and you have some human who still, for the time being, is looking it through but they don't even understand the module. There's a black box module that's been written by a computer that the programmers don't understand what's going on inside of it. They understand the inputs and the outputs. And all right, and then they know what to do with the inputs and the outputs. But exactly what's going on
they're not being allowed, or it's just beyond their comprehension?
The machine is saying, get out of here, you're not allowed.
Go away.
Well,
none shall pass.
Dynamic fluid simulations, for example, visual effects that are used for creating digital water, rainstorms, etc. The big problem is, how do you create that? That's a huge level of detail, right? If you're creating like the perfect storm, right, in the computer, and trying to get that to calculate fast enough that you can render your film in time to hit your release date is always a big concern. So recently, I think it was Doug Roble who gave a talk about how they're using machine learning algorithms to optimize the calculation so that it gets faster and faster and faster. And he admitted, we don't even know what the computer is doing to make it faster, but it's making it faster, and that's great. And so you're in a situation now where machines are being allowed to do things in this black box form that are benefiting us, but we don't fully understand anymore. Right? And of course, this is in line with a lot that goes on in our lives. Your car, you really understand how your car works. We understand the basic mechanics of how a car used to work, like in, the Model T times. And those fundamentals are still kind of in there. But everything, my dad is an auto mechanic. He was an auto mechanic, part-time self-taught auto mechanic. And he fixed his own cars. He built cars for himself, and he was like, everything now is a goddamn module, right? It's like, you can't fix anything. It just has to be replaced. Let's just take out... And I said, well, Dad, the good thing about that is that they can do it super fast, right? He's like, yeah, but it costs a fortune. And indeed, there was an article recently about fender benders now getting into the tens of thousands of dollars per accident because all of this detection technology... To me, like, the rear view mirror where it's got the little lines that show up, like beep, 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 you're getting too close, Yeah. Those sensors and those cameras, it's all in the corners of the car. Not all of it, but a lot of it's in the corners of the car. So you have a little ding, a fender bender that used to be, like $1,000 US, now can be over $30,000 US because all the tech has just been crunched, right? And so again, I'm getting on a tangent now.
That's
too.
Okay.
But this is the world that so to bring it back, understanding these things, that this is where we're going, this is what's happening, I think is incumbent on all of us. And it's something that you think about for your children, about, when you educate them, where, when, and how, and, does it ever stop, is something that I think about quite a lot.
Well, I think I'm going to call this episode Kevin Geiger on the Rise of the Machines. I know it's been done. Actually, it's been done. You need some more water, so I'm going to get you some more water here in a second. While you answer this question, what do you think of as the determining factor about, like, where is the line? What do people need to be when they're evaluating. I mean, maybe this is how do you evaluate? I mean, you're in a creative industry. I guess let me back up my own thought for a second here. I will of course link to your other episode in here because I didn't say too much at the beginning of this, but your former animator.
Who the hell is this guy?
Right. Well, it's okay. You know, I'll put it in the show notes. It'll be front and center. People will read the text, but. The bottom line is that, you know, we'll link that so people can go for some deeper detail. But you're in a creative industry. It's what you're saying earlier. I mean, if you're doing something that requires general knowledge, that's very specific. And there's been a I'm paraphrasing. I'm poorly trying to remember to paraphrase poorly. This conversation that I've heard among a few different thinkers and writers about what if, you know, that there's this hyper focus when talking about AI on the mechanistic computational aspects, but how much of sentience is not computer based, is not an algorithm. I mean, how much, you know, these things we don't even understand, like, you know, you don't see gravity, that's a law though.
Right.
There's so many things that are going on with us that are not necessarily this computer model. It's not just about building like a crazy great computer, you know, and replace. You don't automatically replace a human mind just because you build a computer that simulates the mechanics of what we can see in map.
Exactly.
So
and this
answer that. I'm going to get you some water.
I will. So and thanks for the the refresh. I've been reading a book called Homo Deus.
That's on my list.
Yeah. Yes, it's a follow-up to Homo Sapiens, literally and figuratively. And it's about sort of like man making himself into a god and having the technological means to finally do that. Everything from bioengineering to, you know, cybernetics. And
that
so
writer
forth.
is one of the people I'm trying to attempt to paraphrase.
And they talk about this, about how much. There's a whole section of the book talks about how much of what you think is independent free thinking and reaction is actually algorithmic response to stimulus or to situations, and even tests they've done where they've been scanning people's brains while they're thinking about doing something, making a decision to consciously do something, and how the synapses that are responsible for that decision fire before you're aware that you're making the decision that you want to do that thing. So that really makes you think about, okay, how, you know, what is free will? Yeah. Who's really in charge here? Forget about whether we have a soul or not, but just like, am I actually, as I'm talking to you now, the tangents I went on, the tangents you went on.
Sure.
Did we go on those tangents consciously, and as we were on them, we realized, oh shit, I'm on a tangent. I got to bring this back around because people are stopping listening to the show. That thought, even is that thought inspired by something that is us, and what is the us? And if it isn't, then what is it, and why? Like, why do you need to have that thought to bring the tangent back onto track, and what's on track? Right. So I mean, it sounds like it spirals out.
And actually, all of that it is within a flow. I mean, as someone, not to be too navel-gazy about this, but a little late for that on my part. But the reality is that even our tangents, I mean, if you zoom out a couple of clicks on the dial, they're all actually within a very tight context of what we're talking about. I mean, we're two guys.
The frequencies are not.
We're within like a year and a half of each other age-wise. Right. We're both from you know, we have all these similarities. We're actually in like two pretty concentric circles, even with our seemingly random
and fairly inconsequential.
Exactly, we have that in common. We have that in common.
So, indeed, and you know, this point comes up, and it relates to the AI issues and everything else in terms of how. And I actually, you know, at a certain point when I'm reading that, I'm like, all right, I have a healthy dose of who the hell knows, who the hell cares. It sounds ignorant, but like, do we have a soul or not? I don't know. I'll find out. I have plenty of friends who are saying, you better find out before you die, because if you don't answer correctly, you're going to burn. And it's like, I don't quite believe that, but hey, maybe I'm sure it's possible. You know, I'll give that the benefit of the doubt, but I don't really think that's the case. But I sort of like have this, you know, wait and see response, and I was talking about thinking about the future, but if there's something I can't answer, it's like, all right, let's just set that aside and just deal with what's going on in the moment. And for you know, this issue of how do you prepare for all of this uncertainty and so forth.
See, it's you're answering the question I asked. We're actually this is super linear. This is super linear. It doesn't seem like it in the moment. Yeah,
but it will in a second. people, it was fashionable to talk, 10 years, 20 years ago, even 30 years ago about lifelong learning. That college isn't the end. College just teaches you to learn how to learn and da-da-da-da. Right. And that was true.
I drank that Kool-Aid.
I did, I
still got the aftertaste.
It's now more like that than ever.
Yeah, exactly.
Where you have to continue.
It's part of why podcasts are so popular. Not this one. I mean, ones that actually teach you something useful.
You need better guests, man.
It starts at home. It starts with me.
This and the acceleration of having to sort of reinvent yourself. Like people say, okay, there used to be a time when you could go to a college, learn something, get a job, and maybe at the same company do that thing for like 50 years or so, and then retire on a pension.
And that was still, I went to film school and you did what you did, but that was still in the air when I went off to college in the 80s. That was still like what people were talking about.
And then when I got out and got in, was working, then it turned into, okay, you'll probably have to change jobs once or twice in your life.
You'll have a couple of jobs in your career.
Exactly. Okay. And now it's like, you know what? Everything's temp work. It's like you can't, and it's going to be even worse.
The gig economy is like just called life.
And the gig economy is going to be like the gigabyte economy, where you've got like machines horning in on the business.
That's clever.
You're not just competing. I just thought of it.
I know. Patent that.
Somebody else. We should Google it. I'm sure gigabyte economy.
Exactly.
Somebody
I'm going to write a book about toddler negotiating.
Yes. And how the that is just accelerating more and more and more.
Yeah.
And there was the incoming Harvard president, whose name I don't remember, but why should I remember? Was giving his inaugural speech, and he was talking about the challenges facing higher education. Too expensive, considered too elite. He said many people are questioning even the value of a college education.
Yeah.
And you can think about. I'm not questioning the value of a college education per se, but you can see how people do. And it's like, all right, the idea of paying a huge chunk of money to Harvard or even to like Ohio State University to get a degree in something that you're going to have to retrain yourself in 5 years to do something else. What's the point? You really need to, I believe in people being educated and intelligent, but that should start when you're 3 earlier, 1, a baby, and just every year, what do I have to learn this year to prepare myself for the next year and the next year and the next year? I think that's how we need to think, as opposed to where do I go to college, and then can I stay at this company long enough to get a pension, or are they going to fire me? Maybe if I just keep my head down, everything will be cool. It won't.
And that's not even an option here.
No, it's not.
People are changing jobs. Too much. I was just listening to some other podcasts related to how the especially among the quote unquote the younger generations here, but the 20s to early 30s are in a world here in China where many of them, depending on their industry, there's the perception that they have to change jobs every couple of years, because if not, they're stagnating. That's like, I'm not saying that's everybody, but it's a pretty common thing.
Yes.
Where people they think experience equates to how many things are listed on my resume instead of, I went to one place and I did 20 things. It's like I've been at 20 companies for like 6 months or a year apiece. It's like, is that a good thing? What did you learn? You learned how to find your locker and your desk, basically, and then you moved. Yeah,
being dead wood is not a recipe for success either per se. But and that continual oscillation on the other end of the spectrum, I don't think is healthy, especially for just your physical and mental well-being.
Can't be good.
Something in the middle, and this is when I think there was a. I'm not scientifically referencing anything, but the article just came out talking about how the skill sets you need in 2020, how they've evolved from what people predicted you would need in 2015. So it had things on it like emotional intelligence, being able to handle complex problems, etc. One that bumped up the list in the top 10 from I think 9 to 3 or 4 was creativity.
Okay.
And
I think I heard somebody reference this too.
I'd
like to read the source.
Artistic or design creativity per se. But just
like flexible thinking,
how to make I was invited to speak at my art college as a commencement speaker this past spring.
Did you go to CalArts?
I went to Cleveland Institute of Art.
It sounds like CalArts. Go ahead.
Yeah, it sounds like close enough. I taught at CalArts.
That's I knew there was a connection.
Yeah, and
I do my research, folks.
The title of my address was on the importance of lateral thinking, and how everything that I've done that has amounted to anything has been because I took something that I knew or had been trained in or trained myself in, and then did a lateral, right? Right. So we talk about that whole thing about the plan A, plan B, plan Z. Oftentimes the plan B was the more fruitful approach, and then maybe even led back around later to the plan A. It's like, now I can pop over to that island over there now that I'm here on the adjacent one. But taking, to make this more concrete in terms of an example, in the early days of computer graphics, you had many people, there were no computer graphics programs. People weren't teaching, you couldn't get a degree in computer graphics. So in the early days of Hollywood visual effects, you had people doing work on computers who came from biology or architecture or acting. And it really seeded the industry with a lot of talent from these other disciplines that I think made it a more rich, multidisciplinary. And then, of course, schools did start, even high school started offering classes in computer graphics, etc. And what happened is that people got much more proficient at the computer graphics, but really had to make an effort, if they even did, to fill their head with the other stuff. Like the computer's the tool, but then what do you know, right, about being a storyteller or, human nature or how the world works, and how do you bring that into the work? And that, again, goes to the continual self-education aspect of things. So, and now I forgot what I'm talking about.
Oh, well, I was all engrossed in listening. For once, I can't intuit it. Well, I mean, we're talking about lifelong learning was kind of the jumping off point, and how the educational paradigms have shifted.
Yes.
And looking toward the future.
Oh, the skills I need to train my daughters in.
Exactly. That was the big question I wanted to get back to.
3 of them.
Was all right, I'm listening.
So creativity, which I was talking about, and I just suddenly did a nosedive.
There is a thread. You just have to zoom out.
I think, and I can't force my kids to do anything. I wouldn't dream of it. But what I would encourage them to do is, number one, to continue to cultivate their creative thinking, the lateral thinking, right? To be able to look at situations and understand there's more than one point of view. The way that you might solve something is over here, not necessarily right in front of you, or maybe even be behind you, right? Go back, turn around. So because even if there is a healthy amount of work or even an unhealthy amount of work being done by machines, there will be a few people who are still involved kind of coordinating that or dealing with it. And I think some understanding of that and acceptance of that, and being the person who is computers will increasingly do creative work as well. It's like already they are doing work that could be considered creative. But there will be somebody who's deciding, the computer gives you 10 different iterations of a dress design. I think we should go with that one. And the computer will say, no, according to our big data, we should go with this. But anyway, so creativity, number one. Computer programming skills, I think, will be important, even though we talked about how computers will be increasingly programming themselves. Being conversant with the computer,
right,
is a good thing. And then wilderness survival training. So
for the Horizon, the Machines
just in
aspect.
Case, even though I said,
for the sequel,
the singular, it's not
when
coming
the Singularity
comes, soon, but in my lifetime,
in case you don't catch the first wave.
My kids are young enough that they may be around when machines do become self-aware, or at least become not self-aware, but just there's something that Homo Deus talks about is the difference between awareness and intelligence.
Right.
And how we always used to think that awareness and intelligence were the same thing. But it may be the case that awareness and intelligence are two different things. Ants, for example, display a certain level of intelligence, right? And socially, in terms of how they coordinate, an incredible level, more coordinated than many human societies. But what level of awareness they have, many people say, they have no awareness. Who knows? They probably have some level of awareness. Trees actually work together in a network. There's evidence that they, not only through the root system, but also through the air, and speak, quote unquote, to each other in certain ways. So there's an intelligence there. And then is there an awareness? Perhaps there is. And you can imagine that if there's a tree that's aware, if there's a 2,000-year-old redwood, we talk about this conversation or the inconsequential nature of our existence. We're just like little flitting gnats, right? Just like popping in and out of existence around this tree who, if it's got a 2,000-year, 3,000-year lifespan.
It's like having a midlife crisis at 1,000.
Exactly, right? And we've already had 20 generations of us come and go. So again, another tangent, but these kind of things, I think, this is why I stopped looking at my Trump news feed so much, because it really was making me dumber. I was like, another jackass thing, another crazy thing, another insane, sexist, horrible,
and then the predictable response from people who think it's stupid, because we know, we know how we feel about it. And
my friends and I, we all get pissed off. The other side, people in my own family who still voted for him and stand by him are like, da da da, and it's like, okay. I'm spending too much time on this, and I'm not and it's not that you can have your head in the clouds while your ass is on fire, right? But
I don't think I've ever heard that before.
I also
the ever quotable Kevin Geiger.
I just made it up, but again, we should Google that. I'm sure.
Hashtag Kevin Geiger quotes.
It could be that the cloud is made from the fire on your ass. That would be very ironic.
Okay.
But
I think we just jumped the shark on that one.
I did jump the shark. It's a go reference that which episode of Happy Days was that with Fonzie?
Where he jumped over the shark on the motorcycle.
Right, that. This kind of, you have to, this is something else, and to bring this back around, we were talking about the homeless, because it may have sounded a little bit insensitive, I think, in retrospect, but I think that we need to make sure that we're staying engaged and current with our lives, the politics, the social issues, right? But also not losing sight of the ideals and aspirations of who and what we want to be, and what humanity might become if we're not careful, but what we could become if we're aware and mindful. To overuse that word. And so, for example, going back to we're talking about homeless. When we were in LA. Even today, we saw a person on the bridge we gave some money to who was burned over half their body and missing fingers, and you see that stoves here sometimes just kind of go. And my daughter has asked when she's like, so Daddy, why is that person sitting on the ground? And then we don't just shovel it without explaining.
Nothing to see here, honey.
Sometimes we even have her actually put the money there and talk to her about it. In LA, I said, well, she's in Santa Monica, there are people scattered everywhere. And it's understandable. It's warm, right? And if you're going to be homeless someplace,
that's where to do it. That was my home for 6 years.
Again, not to be glib about it.
Yeah, no, I don't mean it that way.
And I talked to her about it. I said, well, there are people who don't have a home, and then you can see the concern, like, why don't they have a home? And then you want to make sure that you explain it in a way that she can have some basic understanding for her 2.5-year-old question, right? But not freak her out, so she thinks, oh my God, what if we lose our home? Are we okay?
Right,
and you don't want to give her nightmares.
Right.
Those will come later.
Sure.
So I think that's also comes back to the trying to bring this around in some way to work-life balance and just family balance. Man, you always feel like when you're... You know how people would say, oh, when I'm at a job or doing something, you feel like you're faking it, or people are going to find me out.
Sure.
You often feel that way with your kids, too. We're like, am I giving them the right advice? Am I preparing them well enough for what's going to happen? How can I?
Yeah.
And at some point, they're going to, like in their teens or tweens or earlier, think, Dad's a joke. And then maybe in their 20s, they come back around and go,
that's part of the cleaving process.
Exactly.
So
and it's necessary, too, right?
Yeah.
But all of that. So
it says the single guy. With
But
I read books. I had biology. I had
you were somebody's kid.
I had psychology in college.
You cleft something at some point, right? So.
Wow. And scene. No, please continue.
But those, when you ask how's it going, but it sounds like I've just been like, this fretful, bag of
fretful owl.
But I've been having a great time with it. It sounds like I'm digging myself out of a hole.
Well, it's okay.
I've been having a great time being a dad. But there is this other side where you really, are concerned about what kind of world your kids are growing up in now. What's it going to be like later? And to kind of put some button on this myself, I asked my mom once. This was actually before I had kids. Okay. But I said, hey, Mom, I think it was 20 years ago, so I was only 30. I said, when did you stop worrying about us? And she said, never.
I am now.
She said, you never stop worrying. And she said,
what's wrong? You're asking me, what's wrong?
She said, and you know what? She said, the thing is, as you guys get older, the things that can happen get bigger and more complex, and it's less likely that I can do anything about it. And she said, I just have to, she's a prayerful person, so she said, I have to pray and hope for the best.
She'll give it a prayer.
And, and she said, and I said, wow, okay.
Man.
So, and then we had this big huggy moment, and I was like, okay, don't cry, don't cry.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that's I don't know how to bring it home better than that, man. It never goes away and it never ends. But it does seem like with these, it seems like things are accelerating, and I think every generation says that. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I really see it, and you begin to understand, like the writers from the '60s and the '70s, and I mean, but like the people talking about what's going to happen. Yeah. You mentioned the article said, "Here's what 2020 will actually be like versus what we thought just 5 years ago."
Yeah.
and how different it is.
My father, and this less about the tech and more about the social. He said to me once, he said, I was mentioning that I was worried about something with, and he said, Kevin, he said, when we had you, so I'm 52, so I was born in the 60s. Yeah. He said the United States was insane. He said it's bad now, but he said you had the Vietnam War, you had race riots. He said cities were in flames. Yeah. He said, and it looked like the country was literally coming apart. Like Martin Luther King got shot, and it was like black against white, and just like a mess, right? And he said we had you. You were born into that. And so he said, if you think about like when's a good time to have kids, personally, in terms of your work and job, never. Socially, there's never a good time. So there's also never a bad time. It's like you just like having a kid is a huge leap of faith in what a person could be and what the future could hold. Right. And he said, look at you. You grew up and here you are, and not everybody is. And thank God that I was able to become what I've been and have the luck that I've had come my way and the blessings of the family and so forth.
Sure.
But I thought it was a very optimistic note of him to say you can't just. And it's not that I just look at those negative things only, but he said, yeah, there are bad things. There's also really wonderful things in the world. And for those of us who don't have children, for those of us who do or want to, being hopeful and being mindful, I think, is the key. In the midst of all of this, we've talked about some stuff here that, as you said, has gone kind of dark. But I don't think either of us personally wallows in it. We both maintain our optimism.
I think we're both kind of I'm fairly relentless optimist, or else I wouldn't be here, couldn't do what I do.
Yeah.
Wouldn't.
You really only can. Are you a relentless optimist? Okay, then you might have a chance in China.
Maybe.
Maybe now you might have a chance in the U.S.
I can only dream, man. Kevin, thanks so much, man.
Thank you, Brendan.